What's going on, champs and chambettes? It's FireMonkey here, and today's YouTube video isn't exactly about leaks and upcoming content, but instead scrapped content in an earlier version of the Augment system, before the one we actually ended up getting in Chapter 4, Season 1. Now, I thought I'd go ahead and talk about this because it was recently re-added to the files on accident, but also, as you can see right here, we have the Augments tab, even though Augments aren't currently enabled, and that is because, as you can see by this milestone, Augments will be returning later on during the season, which is going to be wild seeing how we have Augments mixed with weapon mods and all that stuff, but it will be a pretty fun time. I mean, I'm one person, for example, who really loves Augments, so I'm excited to see them return. But the whole entire point of this video isn't to talk about Augments returning or anything, but instead to talk about the history of Augments and the unreleased version of them back before they ever even reached the files. You know, back before we ever even knew anything was going on or that Augments even existed. Now, firstly, you may be wondering why we're even talking about this and why it took this long for this information to actually come out, because, you know, this is something relating to Chapter 4, Season 1, and as you can tell by the game right now, we are currently in Chapter 5, Season 1, so why is this even a brand new topic? Well, for some odd reason, when Epic Games actually went ahead and added, you know, all the new files and everything for this season, they actually added the old version of Augments into the files that were unfinished and not supposed to be seen by us at all. So because of this little whoopsie or mishap, we were able to actually see an earlier form of the Augments and see what they could have been before they ever even released. This also included some scrapped Augments for stuff like the Most Wanted event from a long time ago, you know, where we had the whole entire heat system and everything, so it was a cool little glimpse into Fortnite's history. And they actually used to have a very interesting form where instead of Augments being, you know, one specific gimmick or whatever else, most of the time they would actually mimic and, you know, put two different Augment gimmicks together and have a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 variant for each of the Augments, which may have speculated that we were going to be able to have upgradable Augments over time. You know, maybe instead of having the 4 unlockable Augment slots, which was originally supposed to be 5, you'd be able to go ahead and spin one of your Augment unlocks to actually upgrade the rarity of an Augment you already had in order to make it more and more powerful. So to kind of go through the list here of the different Augments we have, we're going to go ahead and, you know, quickly eliminate this person so I can look at my other monitor. We have one that was kind of on its own called High Ground, which made it so you gained low gravity and you had greater weapon accuracy while in the air. So basically, you know, we had the whole soaring sprints before, but basically think about turning soaring sprints into something where when you're in the air, you're going to be more accurate when actually shooting down at whatever enemy you have. Obviously, that was an Augment that we didn't really see. We kind of saw the soaring sprints version of it, but we never saw this combined aspect they were working on. So it is very interesting to see at one point in time they plan to actually have a unique little special flare. Is this not giving? Okay, it is giving me shield, but it used to have a unique flare where it actually kind of combined different things together in order to make a more powerful Augment compared to what we got in the game. On top of that, we also had a lot of Tier 2 Augments, which had some very interesting effects actually going on with them. One was Shotgun Proficiency Tier 2, which was basically the whole entire, you know, shotgun siphon, but it guaranteed you 15 HP whenever you eliminated an enemy with a shotgun. And of course, since this was the Tier 2 variant, I assume Tier 1 would actually have a lower amount of XP gain or health gain whenever you actually eliminated someone, but it was interesting to see how they had these Tier 2 versions being worked on a long time ago. On top of this, we also had something called Scouting the Storm, which may sound a little familiar when I actually tell you what it does, because it's a mixture of two Augments we've had in the game separately, and what it did was it made it so you move 10% faster while you were in the storm, and then every time there's a new storm circle, it would mark all nearby enemies and loot. So, you know, it's similar to some of the other Augments we've actually seen, but instead of having both of the effects combined into one, it was split up into two different items or two different Augments that actually ended up releasing in the game. But it's interesting, and that's one thing I've kind of noticed while looking through all these, that a lot of the stuff they originally planned was going to make Augments even more powerful than when we originally saw it, because what it was going to do and the whole entire focus of it was basically taking Augments that we knew as two separate ones, or maybe even three separate ones, and merging them into one massive Augment that would be a major game changer. I mean, we have the game changer category for Augments already, but imagine if every Augment was literally a game changer and how it gave you a lot more benefits than what we saw in the game. Some of the other ones that we actually saw in the files here that were very interesting was one called Going for a Ride, which did not have a Tier 1 and Tier 2 version, but what it did was made it so whenever you were riding a vehicle or riding on top of wildlife, you would have double the reload speed. So instead of a weapon, for example, if you look over here at the Nemesis AR, instead of this taking taking 2.5 seconds to reload, it would take 1.25 seconds to actually reload the entire weapon, which is a massive buff, you know, especially for someone riding on vehicles. However, that wasn't the only thing it did, because it also gave you a benefit we've actually already seen from an augment before, where vehicles no longer consumed fuel. So instead of just having the, you know, no fuel consumption augment or whatever, it was a mixture of that and another augment that I don't think we ever really saw in the game, which made it so you would be able to reload your guns a lot faster. And honestly, I think I would have preferred going for a ride as an actual augment in the game, because being able to have the faster reload while having no fuel being lost or whatever in a vehicle just sounds like a lot of fun. And it's more of a situational thing, so it's not like it would be overpowered in the sense that you would be always going around and doing it. You know, I could see some people trying to loop around a vehicle or something, you know, trying to reload real quickly and get back to a fight, but of course, depending on vehicle health, that could have been an issue that was kind of diverted by just shooting the vehicle. Some of the other augments I thought was pretty interesting was there was one simply called Railgunner, which made it so that you were actually granted a railgun, and then there was also a tier 2 of that augment, which made it so that you dealt a little bit more damage or something along those lines with the railgun. But it was interesting to see how they planned to have railguns returning back in Chapter 4 Season 1, and I feel like we leaked that it was supposed to happen at one point and it never did or something, or maybe I didn't, I just have a bad memory. Either way, it is interesting to see how this scrapped version of the augment actually existed, and then we actually had some interesting other things added, such as the fact that every single explosive with the core launcher specialist augment would actually apply the shockwave effect. So imagine you throw a grenade, right? Not a normal impulse grenade or a shockwave grenade or anything, just a normal ordinary grenade, and it had a shockwave effect. Imagine you shot an RPG, shockwave effect. Used a grenade launcher, shockwave effect. It would be super interesting to see how that would actually go into the game, because not only would you be dealing damage to other players, but you would also be able to shoot people into the storm with more weapons than just a shockwave grenade, because it would be built into all of the different rocket launcher type of ammo, right? And all the different rocket launcher weapons, including actual guns that you would shoot that use missile ammo. Now, in case you're curious what some of the scrapped augments during the Most Wanted heist event was back in Chapter 4 Season 1, we actually had two here. We had a few of them. So firstly, we had Hot Pursuit, which increases your heat level by 1, and you gain the spicy move speed effect. So, you know, like for example, whenever you ate a spicy pepper, you gain that move speed effect based on your heat level. So if you had a heat level of 1, you had a slight spicy speed boost or whatever. If you had a heat level of 4, you know, the maximum, you would have a higher speed boost. But it was interesting to see how they plan to have your move-based speed or whatever themed around how spicy your wanted level was, depending on, you know, if you had the augment or not. We also had Heist Reward, which made it so you granted bars over time to yourself if you actually were holding one of the heisted exotic weapons in your inventory. So let's say you had like the heisted accelerant shotgun. You would be able to get bars just slowly added until you had the maximum of 5,000 over time just for having this there. I'm sure that they didn't actually release that one because it might have been messed with the bar economy or whatnot, but also during that time you were able to just break vaults and get an insane amount of bars anyways, so it might have just been scrapped because, you know, it would have just been a placeholder augment that really wouldn't have changed anything too much, because there were already a lot of better other alternatives. And then we also had Heat Seeker, which isn't actually for the whole entire heisted event or whatever else, but it does kind of show some of these early version of augments, which made it so you got thermal vision whenever you were aiming down the sights with any scoped weapon. So we've kind of had a similar thing when we actually got the DMR that had like the thermal sight or whatever, and you know, whenever you were in mud, you got the thermal vision, but we never really had this version where it was whenever you had any weapon that had a scope, like this, for example, or does this have scope? Nope, not that. But yeah, basically like this, for example, you would just been able to get thermal vision by zooming in, and I feel like, you know, we only got the nerf version of it that was only for a certain weapon, you know, being the DMR, instead of what could have been a super overpowered version of it in the game. And then another weird augment that we never actually saw in the game, but would have been a really interesting gimmick, was something that actually was called Gun Game. Now, how Gun Game was going to work was basically whenever you got an elimination with a weapon, if I could even aim, for example, I would have my weapon swapped with another random weapon in the current loot pool. So basically, think about it as this, right? You're playing the game in a complete RNG factor, where even though you may have picked up like this burst SMG or something, you may not be having an SMG for long, because you eliminate one person and then boom, your SMG is all of a sudden a rarity higher, but now it's a sniper or something along those lines, right? It would be a very risk-based system, but it would be really cool for challenge videos and people just trying to put a little bit more kick into their game, you know, have a little bit more RNG, a little bit of an extra flair going on. That could have really shifted how they were playing the game, but we never actually saw it in the game. Now, something they also mentioned here is that the lower the weapon's rarity, the more likely you're actually going to get a better gun from the actual upgrade system, because Gun Game not only rotated between different rarities and stuff, but different weapons as well. well. So literally every single time you were playing, it would rotate every elimination to be something completely different. Now, it'd be based entirely on what weapon you actually got the elimination with, so it's not like your entire inventory is going to get shuffled with every single elimination you try getting, or whatever else, right? But it would be interesting to see, especially with how we have weapon mods and all that stuff now, if the gun game Augment actually made it so it would shuffle the weapon mods, for example. So, you know, while I have a scope right now, maybe I get an elimination and then out of nowhere I don't have that scope anymore, but I have something completely different. It would have been a very unique flair, but of course, you know, this is in the land of scrap territory where they could rework it and bring it back in the future. But I thought I'd make a quick little video, you know, just kind of talking about all these old augments and the old augment system, how it's supposed to be a tier-based system, because it does kind of shine a light on how Epic Games has been slowly crafting these things for a long time. And even though we're leakers, you know, we're people who try to break all the news and information to you guys so you can stay in the loop with everything, there are still some things we don't get to see, such as very, very early versions of stuff like the augment system itself. But until next time, hope you champs and champions enjoyed today's YouTube video. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow with another upload. Peace out.